days when we used to go out. We may vaguely remember those times. I don't know, what was it, about a year and a half ago? But if I ever go to the theatre now or something like that, I always get a seat at the end of the row, because otherwise I feel vulnerable because I can't get up as quick as other people, or, you know, someone wants to go out and use the loo. So I have to plan ahead a lot more than I ever used to. And you know, that's predominantly about Parkinson's, but I think it applies to any kind of struggle you have with the condition. You know, if you can plan to take mitigating action if you need to, and also talk about it so people are aware of it, it does make a huge difference.
Yeah. I think there's sometimes a bit of a difference, I think, because of your condition, sort of really understandable that why you would do that, have those strategies. I think it's also understandable for the likes of me and for David to have those strategies as well. I think there is a danger, though, that having some of those strategies almost helps you to rationalise that there is something to be frightened about. And I think it's good to get those things under control. But the other aspect of it that I've been working on is to address, so what is it that I'm frightened about, and can I challenge my thinking around that so that I don't have to put those strategies in place for things. In my case, that some of the things are, in quotes, irrational fears. Where these have come from, it's really difficult to tell. Could have been in childhood or something like that. I think we've got a rational and a conscious mind, and what's useful about understanding these things is then it gives you that power to have a choice about doing something about it. I've got a really strange phobia from childhood. I don't like buildings with high ceilings. It makes me feel really, really panicky and stuff. That might be a reason why I don't go to church. I'm not religious, because a lot of churches got really, really high ceilings and stuff like that. But that's something that I can live the rest of my life with, and it's not really going to affect me. But panicking around public transport, flying, maybe, that some people have, you know, that can have a big impact on their life, not being able to see relatives and friends and things like that. And my feeling is that there are things that people can do. It's not always easy, and people might not choose to do that. But I think it's useful for people to know that there are options out there and things that they can change. And the starting point, like you've said, David, is to start talking about it and sort of recognizing those things yourself.
I think the thing is, like, is to name it, but not to let it be a burden. Not, as you say, Mark, it's sometimes easy by naming it to kind of give it more form. Yeah. And you've got to be careful that you're not, you know, one of us said at the start, you know, the fear of panic attacks is the fear of having a panic attack. Yeah. You know, and it's that kind of subliminal stuff that you've got to try and work on, isn't it? Because fear is a very insidious thing, and it's irrational a lot of the time. You know, and it's the brain compensating for the fact that we're not being stalked by tigers or lions every day. The brain will grab onto something perhaps that's not as significant, but will trigger this fear, fight or flight reaction in us. And it's kind of being able to recognize it, isn't it? And sort of divorce yourself from it to an extent.
And I often think with things like that, the fear is in the anticipation. Yeah. More. It's back to your Jaws analogy, and then the reality of it isn't so bad. An example of that, a friend Andy, he was always said, and often it's a case of you try and you know, if you actually do those things, you find out it's not as frightening or as scary as you thought it was. You can overestimate the problem or the risk that's going to happen. You underestimate your ability to cope with it. An example I had was to say, my friend Andy, he used to have recurring dreams about turning up to work without any trousers on. And my suggestion for him was to get over that, was to actually go into work without any trousers on, and to see that it was okay. But he chose not to follow that path. But I thought that would have solved the problem one way or another.
Well, one thing's for sure, if he did that on a Friday, he wouldn't need to go into work on the Monday, would he?
No.
Yeah. Well, I'd say it would have solved the problem.
I had a dream once where I was eating a huge marshmallow, and when I woke up, the pillow had gone.
Oh dear. Yeah.
I mean, feel free to edit that bit, David.
Yeah. We'll cut. That won't make the final cut, I doubt.
Probably not. No. I mean, Mark, you said right at the outset about the starting point is talking to somebody about it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you know, how do you actually do that? You know, how does that conversation go? Because I know that's a massive hurdle that people really struggle with.
It is. I think it is the hardest step, really, because I think it's by talking to someone else, you're admitting to yourself that you've got a problem and that you need help, and that's maybe particularly with the stigma that goes around it. That's one of the hardest things to do. I think in my instance, it was sort of taken out of my hands because I tried to cope and not talk to people about it, and I just broke down. The last time I was in work in the office, there was a meeting there, and we were prepping for a presentation to external suppliers, and I was just it was going to go badly, that presentation, because things weren't the way they should have been, and I didn't know how I was going to deal with that. And the meeting finished, and I just sat there. I couldn't move. And friend James, or colleague, just spoke to me. Said, "Mark, are you all right?" And it was, no, not really. And then the tears just came, and that was it. Really, that was just someone asking me that question: "Are you okay?" And not are you all right? It was a proper genuine ask. He could see that something wasn't right, and he took the time and the care and empathy to properly ask me. And that was what it took for me to open up. I then basically broke down. He, picked me up, almost literally lifted me up, walked back to. He took me to his car when he drove me home, and then had a quick chat with my wife. And then I started to speak to the doctors and got some. It was a long time to recover, but it took that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of makes you realise that. The human brain is a massive supercomputer, but like any computers, they just get stuck in a whirl from time to time. And it's almost like, well, what would happen if you rang somebody up about your brain getting in a whirl? Well, the first thing the brain help desk would tell you is, have you switched it off and on again?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's kind of, that's what you need to do. So, I've had over the past couple of years, I've had some episodes of blurred vision and a kind of migraine. And I don't really get migraines, but it'll just come on for no reason. And it is often when I'm stressed. But I've kind of rationalized it with myself that that's my computer saying, you've just got too many applications open at the same time. You need to switch off and on again. And what I do is, if I can, and usually I can, is just go and lie down and just have a sleep. And once I wake up, I'm fine. And I think a lot of people with migraines do that, but it's made me realize, as I say, I'm not a massive migraine sufferer, so I'm no expert on the subject. But for me, it's made me realize about this analogy with a computer, and it's kind of helped me just get my head around what's going on.
I think that's really interesting the way you've talked that, because I think I don't want to get to the point where I have to because it's broken. And so what I've started to do, I talked about like mindful activities, used a tool called Headspace, which provide that for free, which is a mindfulness app. But start to do other things and sort of build that more generally into my life. And my feeling is that anything that you can do that you can lose yourself in, some positive activity that you're being proactive about, I think. So just watching TV perhaps isn't the case in that, or reading a book perhaps not, but an activity you can get involved in that you really have to focus on, for me, is like that reboot of your brain. And for me, if I do something like 2 or 3 times a week, that sort of stops me getting into that cycle. So mine are probably a couple of things. One would be baking that I do, and the other one was strangely dance. I never thought I'd get into that, but do Latin and ballroom dancing. And it's like, you have to focus, because if you're not focusing, you're going to go wrong. And that, an hour can go past and I'm not thinking about anything else. I think in the past at work, if I was loads of stuff going through my head, I'd say, right, I need to get up and out and away from my desk and go for a walk. But it didn't really work for me because those things would still be going through my head. I could walk around the city and come back and I'd not noticed where I'd been because my head is still whirring with all of those things. So something that can take you away from that. What I've found now is, having done dance and other things that I'm focusing on, I am able to go for walks and properly turn that switch off, or turn off the things that are going through my head. And then I come back and those things that are piled up seem to be a bit more manageable.